in the name is from Assembly Member Russell.
Yes, I've lost my timer, sorry. Thank you very much indeed. So my questions are for the Commissioner. Commissioner, I know you are aware of the great work going on in Iceland reducing violence and murder, because I mentioned it to you informally earlier this year. Now, between 2005 and 2018, Iceland recorded just 24 murders. Over the same time period, London recorded 1,862 murders. Now, I know Iceland is much, much smaller than London, but even so, Iceland had 67 murders per million people in that time, compared to London's 210 per million people. So that's 3 times as many in London. Now, I'm just wondering if you've looked at what police are doing in other countries, particularly Iceland, in terms of reducing violence and murder, and do you think there's anything for the Met to learn from what other countries are doing in this area?
Well, thank you very much indeed. Yes, we look continuously at what people are doing around the world. I speak quite regularly to colleagues from other police services, both national police services and also those in sort of global cities. And it is the global cities which seem to us to be probably, in many respects, the best comparators. And so if we take, for example, New York, which is often, of course, rightly fated for the reductions over one particular time period, sadly they now are suffering from considerable increases and anyway have about 3 times the murder rate that we do. But they are very good at some things in relation to their fast time work in response to a shooting, the way they use some digital capabilities. We have learnt a great deal from them. I think some other environments, and you've mentioned Iceland, there's possibly more learning for wider society and wider public services in a way than there is for the police service. The environment, as you pointed out, is very, very different. But the attitudes and the way in which people do preventative work very clearly and early on, the way in which people are encouraged to be sort of pro-social, if that's a word. All these things, I think, contribute to lower violence rates in general, not just, of course, homicide. But I must say that the homicide rate in London has stayed pretty much static in the last 3 years, and is less now than it was in the noughties. It's still much higher than we would all like, of course it is, but I think in a very dense urban environment, with the kinds of challenges that our city does have, it bears comparison with any of the global cities. And as I've said before, we'll come back to the underlying crime statistics, the reductions in stabbings of boys under 25. 400 less, roughly speaking, this year than last, than the comparator year, which is 2 years ago. The reductions in knife crime in general, in gun crime, lowest level since 2010. And in street robbery at the moment, down nearly just over 40%. I mean, these are very significant. 13,000, I think, less people robbed, which is a very nasty thing to happen to somebody. So I'm convinced we're heading in the right direction, but we must go on learning from around the world, of course.
Great. Now, one area of Iceland's policing that I'm a real fan of is the way that they train their officers. In 2010, they changed the way they do their police training by putting the police academy into the university, which is culturally very different from a police academy. Now, I know that earlier this year you launched the Police Constable Degree Apprenticeship Programme, which seems like it's taking a similar approach, and I understand the first intake 33% were from Black, Asian and minority ethnic backgrounds and 50% were women, which is really good to see. So I've got a few short questions to ask you about that. Is the programme just a trial? What percentage of recruitment do you hope this route will be in the future? And how are you planning to evaluate this recruitment pathway?
Thank you. Well, this is a scheme which is a national scheme, and we have adopted and we're working with 4 universities at the moment. And in essence, people can come in either as degree holders or under the degree apprenticeship scheme. Either way, they are supported by the university as well as our training, our trainers. It is a slightly longer programme to get the degree, but it is very attractive to many people under the apprenticeship scheme because you can obviously earn money, do things, be educated, get a qualification, and train all within that kind of 3-year period. And we can see that it is appealing to a slightly different demographic, and we are pleased with that. But I can say that all our recruitment, degree holders as well, direct entry detectives, which has been a great success, and our police now, they all have an element of sort of higher education within them, beyond, further education, if you like, within them. And so far, I'm not complacent about this because the employment market is buoyant in London, but so far we have found these schemes to be extremely attractive, and we are able to recruit. As you know, this year we've recruited about 3,000 people. It's a lot to bring in as new police officers, and I do believe that the combination of the different educational environment plus the extra community involvement in our training, which we are doing, will create a different police person in the future.
Thank you.
And it's not a trial. It's carrying on. Apologies.
Thank you. Just digging a bit further on the recruitment and training, in July this year, the Observer reported on cases of violent disorder, cheating and dishonesty amongst trainees at Hendon Police College. How much time will the recruits through the degree apprenticeship programme spend at Hendon Police College?
I can't give you a precise answer, I'm afraid. I obviously could afterwards, but they do spend quite a considerable amount of time there. They don't live there anymore. In my day, if I can put it that way, people lived in for a protracted period, 20 weeks. They travel to Hendon or sometimes to another training establishment of ours on a daily basis. But for example, they're week-long learning about officer safety, emergency life-saving, public safety. Some of our community-based stop search training, all these sorts of things are delivered at Hendon, and I would welcome you coming, Caroline, because it is a highly professional, state-of-the-art, brilliant training environment for our officers.
I'd love to do that maybe in the new
Thank
year.
you.
That would be fantastic. So are you happy with the progress made so far to improve the culture of the Met via recruitment, and do you have targets set around cultural change?
So I said at the beginning, we are looking hard at our culture, and we will be helped by Baroness Casey. And I don't assume anything about what she will find. I want her to range far and wide and have a drains up look at us. I believe, as I've said, that the vast majority of Met people are good people working in difficult circumstances, who are extremely not just courageous but compassionate and restrained and very professional. But we've seen too many examples in the last several months of individuals and groups who have not upheld the standards that the rest of us would like to see. We need to stop that, root them out, get rid of them if they still exist. They're not welcome. And I think, if you looked at the Met today compared with 5 years ago, you'd have seen a big cultural shift. And between 5 years ago and 10 years before that, another big cultural shift. We need to make a shift now, that's quite plain. And we have a whole series of programmes that are contributing to that. We don't have a specific set of indicators for cultural change, but we have a number of sub-indicators that will tell me how we're getting on.
Thank you. Now, I think it's really important to have targets for those things, but back in October, I launched a report looking at murder in London, and in it I recommend that the Mayor should set a goal for 0 murders within 10 years, so that both he and the Met have a strategic goal focused on prevention to measure progress against. Now, my report showed that between 2005 and 2020, there were a total of 2,140 people were victims of homicide in London. Now, I believe that each one of those deaths could and should have been prevented, and that London should be aiming for a target of 0 homicides. Now, it's a target that we have for deaths on the road through Vision Zero, and there's no reason we should limit our ambition to end preventable death to road death. Would you consider adopting a goal of reducing murder to 0 in London within 10 years?
Frankly, I don't think I would, no. And I don't want to sound unambitious in that, but when you look at the fact that right now we have a 97% detection rate for murder. We have enormous effort going into reducing violent crime. We've had some fantastic successes. But I'm sure you've looked at the statistics over the last 15 years. This year, who knows, but last year about 140. To get from 140 to 0 in 10 years, I think, for a start, it's not, of course, very much of it in the police's hands, but I don't actually think it is a realistic target to set. It'd be lovely to aim towards it. I get that, but I just don't believe in targets that you're not going to achieve.
Commissioner, I'm out of time. I realise it's not entirely down to you, down to
Absolutely
the police,
not.
but I think it's like Vision Zero on our roads. There is no other acceptable number for a homicide target, but I'm out of time.
So maybe longer than 2030.
Thank you. The